This is To the Point, your briefing on Asia's entertainment business. I'm Janine Stein.
And I'm Patrick Frater.
And if it's happening content, streaming, cinema, or corporate chaos, we're talking about it.
Let's get to the point.
Patrick, major film excitement this week. Tell us about it.
There is a lot of excitement this week. After last week, when I was anticipating everything at the Cine Asia conference, it's now the time for the reality check. This is the week that Avatar 3, Avatar Fire and Ash, to give it its proper name, is rolled out globally and particularly through Asia. We get the first prints screening in Asian cinemas from this week. It's a huge deal because the film is a franchise. It's made over $5 billion in the past and has been important for indicating how well cinema is going. And this year, more than ever, it's really a bellwether of how strong the theatrical film industry is. And many people are suggesting this is a bit of a test, really, because we've been fairly cool on the strength of cinemas, how well it's come back from the pandemic or not. And this is going to be a real test of how well that is controlled, how well that narrative continues. We've seen, even in the last few weeks, quite a few ups and downs. There were three big films due out in November and December, which were supposed to do exactly what I've just been talking about, revive the cinema industry. One of them worked better than people expected. That was Zootopia 2, which hit. The one that flopped, relatively speaking, is Wicked for Good. So now Avatar 3 is coming out. It's got a global coordinated release. Everywhere it's going out this week, starting Wednesday in South Korea and I think Indonesia as well, and then rolling out into the really big territories in Asia, starting Friday, which is Japan, China, and other places too. So it's going to be a big test. We've seen the first results come in from South Korea. It's made $3.5 million in 2 days. That, to me, is actually not as strong as it would like to be. I've seen commentators in Korea suggesting that this film will do 10 million admissions in a country of 50 million people. Well, those are the kind of numbers that the first two installments of this film did. But I'm going to be surprised if it happens again that way. And, you know, we have the same questions in China, where the film broke records, did phenomenal amounts of box office. The first film, if you remember, was actually released in 2009 when there were less than 10,000 cinemas in China. Now we have nearly 100,000 cinemas. So you might think that the results will be 10 times bigger. Well, I actually don't think they'll even be as big. And I've been talking to distributor friends who say this film will be lucky to do even 70% of what Avatar 2 did from 3 years ago in China. So for China, and we will see how close it gets to that.
You wrote quite extensively this week about the results of theatrical in globally, and you singled out Asia, of course. Tell us what you wrote about and what you're seeing for the whole year.
I reported on a piece of research by a UK company which is very good at doing box office forecasting. They do very precise country by country and even film by film reports for the companies that commission them. And they also do these rather interesting global forecasts, which they revise a year. So they're actually pretty accurate. They're within 5%. And they're predicting that next year, 2026, we'll see a small uplift, 5% globally in the theatrical business. Asia is going to be flat, they say. China is going to be down next year. And so the growth is actually not coming from this region at all. It's coming from the US, Europe, and the other countries where Hollywood movies are at their strongest. And as we've seen throughout much of Asia, local films are increasingly successful and Hollywood films are being pushed to the sidelines. So that's, again, brings us back to Avatar 3 and why this is such a test.
But their forecasts really track with what you're saying, is that Avatar will be down, and so it's all consistent. Are there any inconsistencies?
Well,
Yeah.
I haven't seen inconsistencies yet, but I do think the China thing is a bit of a shock to people because we've seen the China box office at the top line grow by about 25, maybe even 28% this year. We haven't finished the year, obviously. So, we're going to see China look very, very strong in 2025. And so people will be a bit shocked to say, why is it going down again next year? Well, one of the reasons is that early this year we had this phenomenal success of Ne 2, which is a Chinese-made
Mm,
animation
mm,
film, which
mm,
did over $2
mm,
billion, absolutely
mm,
unprecedented
mm.
in a single country. And that completely distorts the Chinese figures. So if you were to take out that top film, maybe you could actually consider that the Chinese market is still growing or still recovering. Um, but we will see. So that looks like a rather anomaly, and it requires some explanation.
So where do local films sit in all of this?
Well, Asian local films have been doing quite well, but not as a class. In each country, there have been quite significant local successes. And again, this was one of the themes within Cine Asia, that maybe we should stop looking at this pre and post
Yeah.
pandemic comparison because it's now 5 or 6 years old. Maybe it's not so useful. And instead, look at some of
Right.
the success stories. And there are success stories in each of the Asian territories. Hong Kong has discovered its own cinema again and broken records. We've seen the biggest ever film from Indonesia this year. Vietnam has broken its own record. And in Japan, which is a very mature economy and a very mature cinema market, this year we have a film called Kokuho, which means national treasure, interestingly enough, break all-time records for a live-action film, and become, I think it's the biggest film, or if not the second biggest film this year, and certainly the biggest non-anime title. And that's a film that has been selected for as Japan's candidate for the Oscars as well.
Which brings us nicely to the Asian films at the Oscars.
Yes, it does. The Oscars.
Anything notable for you?
Well, the
I saw
Oscars.
Left-Handed Girl. Sorry, Taiwan's entry, Left-Handed Girl, has done really well on Netflix's global top 10 non-English movies.
Well, thank you for tracking that.
What about?
I haven't been tracking those numbers properly, but I'm
Well,
glad.
I'm obsessed with Netflix's top 10 because it's basically it's transparent, it's available to everybody. It's not, um, as far as I know, because they have no interest in doing it. It's not manipulated by any PR or any spin. So they release it every week. It's a lot of data. I do go through it. I spend a lot of time on it, and I do notice TV more than film. I notice which films make it globally. So Left-Handed Girl was among them. What else is coming out of Asia that you're hopeful for at the Oscars?
Well, there's the shortlist, and that's what it is. These are not yet nominations. They do this process where they throw out 80% of the field in December, and then we'll actually have the proper nominations in mid-January, I think it is. But at the shortlist stage, we've got at least 6 or 7 or 8 films with Asian connections, and some of them are, I say connections because some of them are co-productions. I mean, in fact, Left-Handed Girl is a co-production as well.
Yep.
It's flying the flag for Taiwan, but it's also a
Yep.
UK-US co-production.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and we see the same thing with It Was Just an Accident, which is the Jafar Panahi film. It's flying the flag for France this year, but clearly it's about Iran, and we've seen that in several cases. So I can see, if I'm looking at my list, I think 7 or 8 films like that, of which from Asia or with Asian connections, of which at least 3 or 4 are co-productions.
Well, that's another whole topic. I mean, co-productions are I think, the trend of the year. They always have been. I know that we have different outlooks on what constitutes a co-production, but for me, a co-production is not necessarily two countries that have a official treaty, but for you, you prefer to call a co-production between two countries that have official links. Am I
Well,
right?
I,
Or have you changed? Have I changed your mind?
no, you haven't changed my mind, but the reality is that you're right and I'm wrong. um, I,
I don't have to be right.
I mean, I think
I love it though.
the treaties are not always helpful. They don't always exist between some countries and others.
Mm.
I mean,
Well, yeah, they don't exist, but
the US doesn't have co-production treaties, for instance, and other countries do them. And I think they're mostly for political reasons. But I like to call them co-ventures, but I think I'm in a minority there.
yeah, I'm for co-productions. Also, I think it speaks to like larger relationships, the soft power of countries' soft power, and I mean, Left Hand Girl. You just watch it, you get you're engaged, you're involved. It's a fantastic film. What else from Asia that has Asian film on the Oscars? What else
Well, as I mentioned,
has
Kokuho, which
made
is,
your list?
well,
Yeah,
Kokuho
Kokuho.
is this film, this Japanese film about kabuki, which is
Yeah.
which is on the shortlist as the best international film. It's also
Mm-hmm.
crossed over onto the main lists and is competing overall for best hair and makeup, which is absolutely appropriate to this film. That sounds like a very lightweight
Yeah.
category to some people, but in fact, it's completely appropriate.
Excuse me. No
I know,
such thing as
I,
lightweight in
I'm
hair and makeup.
I'm talking to a girl, I know, but
No,
this
you're talking to me. I'm obsessed.
this,
Okay, but
this film has
I
lots of
agree. I
scenes
think
of makeup and dressing because the whole film is about kabuki and it's about these two men who portray women and that they have to go through these transformations multiple times on screen, which is absolutely fascinating and delightful.
but of course kabuki is all about the makeup, right?
Yes, it is.
I'm looking forward to seeing that one. The big news, Oscars related as well. The big news this week was that YouTube, from I think it's 2029, will air the Oscars, and I think that that is just a significant shift. Maybe it's logical. People go, "Oh yeah, well of course YouTube has got such high engagement," but I think this just marks another step in. I don't know. Sorry, I lost my earphone. Um, I just think it's huge. I think it's YouTube really stepped up. What do you think?
I think you're right. I mean, it feels like, as you just said, it feels like it's such an obvious move. Why was this thing broken up? If you want a wide audience, if you want global engagement in the Oscars, then go for the biggest platform, and that's what YouTube is.
I saw some commentators. I totally agree. I saw some commentators saying that yeah, the and of course this is an obsession mostly in America about the declining value on broadcast TV of the Oscars and that audience have been declining. I did find some Nielsen research updated numbers that on this year's Oscars that actually the audience climbed 1% in 2020 over 2025 over 2024, and it reached a 5-year high of almost 20 million viewers, so including mobile, PC, tablets, and the live broadcast on ABC. So it's not like there isn't an audience. If broadcast audiences are at a 5-year high, it's and then it goes to YouTube. If they're at a 5-year low and then it goes to YouTube, it looks like a Hail Mary for the
Right.
Oscars. But
It looks
actually,
like a
YouTube stepped in at a 5-year
defeatist
high.
move. Hmm.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God, where can we go to lick our wounds? But coming as it does on a 5-year high, there's no licking wounds here. It's like YouTube, it seems like a significant gain for YouTube.
Yes, it does. I mean, I think the move makes sense. It doesn't happen immediately, and by the time it does, maybe the ratings will have gone down, but they will look so clever by saying, "Hey, we signed this deal at the end of 2025." Janine, I want to ask
Well,
you,
correct.
what else have you been looking at? You've been looking at TV in a different way this week, I think.
Well, I have, and I've been looking at Fast, but I've also been looking at YouTube and the Oscars. So if I can just return to that, I
Go
did
for it.
pull out some numbers that between adults 18 and 34, this is in the US, the Oscars delivered a 6-year high and increased 28% over 2024. So that's 18 to 34. That's like prime audience. And if they're delivering highs, I think it makes YouTube's gain even more magnificent. Um, and a self-interest here. I love YouTube, so I'm on it now. Fast, which was my main focus for this week. Fast channels. So I think Fast in Asia is way behind anywhere in the world. Um, except for Australia. And the reasons I've been given are like really low CPMs. No one can make any money from them. I think there have been fast experiments that have failed, like some just slipped away into the dark, are really unnoticed and unmourned. Others failed a little bit more spectacularly, especially mobile platforms, because fast and mobile was not necessarily, maybe it was too early for its time. The one platform was targeting mostly Indonesia and it just didn't work. But I think fast, if it's failed, has been because people treat it as a dustbin for rights no one wants anymore. And I think perhaps the new generation of fast channels, the generation that we're going to be seeing, Samsung just launched 13 new channels in Southeast Asia. It's in Thailand, Philippines, and one other market. But they now across Samsung, and this I'm just Samsung, they now have like about 230 channels across the region. The sweet spot for each country is 100 channels. So if we just take any market, Thailand, another 100 channels. But what's going to go on them? If is the dustbin of television, then nobody's going to watch. But if they curate, if they really, really take into account what people are really passionate about and give them wall to wall what they're already passionate about, it could really work. It's free, it's ad supported. I don't know which advertisers are involved, but they're obviously doing this grand big roadshow. The Samsung platform's a year old, and they say in the last year they're 125% gain, but I don't have specific numbers on that. I mean, I don't know what 125% gain is. Like 125% of 2 is not a lot. So I am going to be looking at fast, especially since A&E Global is on this new fast platform with really, really top brands like Ice Road Truckers. Whether you like it or not, there are fans. It is a bit culty. So I am looking at fast through a different lens. I don't think it's the last resting place, the graveyard for rights. It gives rights, and it gives rights owners another way to possibly monetize. And I don't think that's a bad thing. That's the upside.
One thing I always
Sorry, carry on.
No, one thing I always want to know about these fast channels, which seem to be backed by the TV manufacturers, LG or Samsung. Can you only watch them there? Do I have to own a Samsung? Do I have to have a new Samsung TV in order to watch these channels, or are they accessible in a wider format?
Well, I'm shaking my head. No, the number varies, but in general, people replace their TVs between 5 and 7 years. So the connected TV, when you buy your next TV, you will be buying a connected TV, a smart TV. Because the old TVs just don't exist. But next time you buy Samsung, you will have all these channels on your TV.
But I won't have those from LG, and I can't access them on my laptop or either, right?
No. As far as I know, you can't. No.
Damn.
So my understanding is that, look, if a household doesn't have a TV, then this is not the target. But it's just in the fragmentation of how we access entertainment. We've got vertical drama. That's a newish category that's obviously taken over. We can have a whole episode on microdrama and which microdramas I watched. But it's a new category, it's a new slice. So if A&E puts Ice Road Truckers, Duck Dynasty, 24/7, that not all channels are 24/7 one IP, but single IP brands are there because people already know them. They either love them or they don't love them. If you don't love it, don't watch it. I mean, it's really easy. Do you want 100 channels on your television? Where will you find the 100 channels? That's market. Consumer habit will reveal that, and I think people will pivot. Manufacturers will pivot. Programs will pivot. The big question and the big unanswered question is, how do you make money? I mean, I hear anecdotes, and this is anecdotal, and some people do have an interest in saying that no one makes money out of fast. But the ad-supported channels in Asia, the pure ad-supported channels on old style pay TV platforms, people get checks of $200 a month for their rev share. So I don't know what the economic model is on these new fast channels, but they don't cost a lot to put up. The IP has already been flogged to death. There is no one anywhere really who's going to pay any kind of money for episode one of a 20-year-old series. So this gives IP rights holders another way to monetize old content, which is already fully monetized anyway. It gives them a new way to earn money. And also Samsung, they are selective. You can't just put up your channel. It's
Mhm.
not YouTube. You can't just put up your channel, but they're offering, and they're really, really aggressively going after local channels and local content. And there are massive libraries in Asia that are just underutilized and underexploited. They haven't been able to find a platform, or they haven't tried to find a platform. I admire Samsung for going after this local. Give people a chance to watch it. If they don't watch it, take it down. It does not cost that much to put it up. It's not the old broadcast model where you're spending millions and millions of dollars in infrastructure. So it's a streaming environment, a streaming opportunity. The curation, the presentation is a bit like the old pay TV without the paywall. Is this another nail in the coffin of pay TV? It all comes down to what you offer and how you create and how easy it is you get it to audiences. So if it's difficult to get to audiences, if you have to go through 10,000 set-top box garbage processors, which I have railed against for years, then people are going to just drop off. It's too hard. Forget it. I don't want to call the helpline to navigate it. So maybe a few months ago, I was like, fast, yeah, okay, not my thing. It's just too local. It's just, no, I've got too much else to focus on that's premium. But maybe I haven't given it a fair shake, so I am giving it another chance.
I like your point about the local libraries. I didn't realize that there's so much available and that hasn't yet been monetized. So that's interesting to me. Let's
And
move on
also
quickly.
another thing is
Oh,
let me just one more point. I was told about one channel. It's an Indian channel. It's from Z. It's an Indian channel in Thailand, and apparently that is doing really, really well. So it's another way to cross borders without relying on buyers from traditional channels who are not buying so much anymore, without relying on Netflix, Amazon, Apple, who are very, very, very selective. So this is a new way to access the market. And for that, I'm giving Fast my story of the week.
that's a great point. Let's turn to your headlines of the week. What has caught your eye? What has flashed across your screen?
Oh, my absolute headline of the week is the Philippines and I'm calling it a peace deal between, there's three big players, ABS-CBN, TV5, and the new one, which is All TV, it's Manny Villar. And these three players, so ABS-CBN, when they lost their license in 2020, or more than 5 years ago, they were scrambling for a place to find a new home. So they've done all these deals with GMA, with former rivals, with TV5, and then TV5 notified them recently that they weren't going to be renewing. And this is a big challenge because TV5 is a free TV network in the Philippines that has very broad reach. Now ABS-CBN is scrambling to find a new home. So a few weeks ago, the headline was this big conflict, this big clash between TV5, All TV, and ABS-CBN. Well, now ABS-CBN's done a deal to replace the distribution it had in TV5. I think it's a really deft commercial move, and I applaud ABS-CBN for being this flexible, and also for sorry for TV5, but the world is moving on.
I do think it's
I
a
haven't
remarkable
looked.
story. A broadcaster
It's
without a
such an
broadcast
amazing.
license and still surviving. It's quite impressive.
And you know what? It's one of Asia's amazing stories in the last 5 years, because the reason they lost their franchise is very political. And I have followed it really closely. Also, really, these times have brought really unusual relationships. There wasn't a bigger fight ever in Asia than the one between ABS-CBN and GMA. These are like classic rivals. They absolutely, you don't cross lines. Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. And now they're actually working together. So I think that's my story of the week. What's your story of the week?
Well, and there are two other headlines which have caught my eyes in the last couple of days.
Mm,
Both have political connections. You mentioned politics in that last note. One
mm.
is that we've learned that the TikTok US deal is finally in a shape to get approval, we think, within the next couple of months. And we know who the bidders are, and the consortium is ready, and it looks like political approval is being lined up as well. So that's going through. This is a disposal which was mandated on the last day of the Biden government, approved by both houses of Congress, I believe. And became law, but it's taken very nearly a year for the Trump regime to actually sort it out. Obviously, this means that a Chinese-owned company, ByteDance, is disposing of a significant piece of its business in the world's second largest market, or maybe the largest market for outside of China. Let's say that for ByteDance. I don't know whether the algorithm that ByteDance uses is part of this deal or not. That to me is the most interesting question, or whether they're going to have to rewrite their own software. But if you look at the parties involved in the bid, also you've got Oracle in there as the major bidder slash financier, and Oracle, of course, is behind the Paramount bid for Warner Brothers. This all seems rather across the Pacific, but I do find it nevertheless rather fascinating to see these rapidly changing constellations. And I would have thought if Oracle gets TikTok US, it can't have Warner Brothers as well. That's my thinking. I have a question relating to the last headline that I wanted to throw up. Was Hong Kong has banned a local film called Deadline. It won't be allowed to show in Hong Kong cinemas, even though it was made by a Hong Kong director. In some ways, you could say it was inevitable. This is a director who was one of the people who made 10 Years, a film which portrayed a very dystopian view of Hong Kong. It was made back in 2015. Talked about the national security law, which then didn't exist, but now does, and is probably as difficult for creators to engage with as these people imagined back in 2015. I somehow, my question is, by banning this film, have the authorities in Hong Kong drawn more attention to this, or would they have been better to simply leave it alone?
Um, I have a very liberal view on censorship in that I don't like it. They get attention for all kinds of things. Just like one more negative headline, it will be gone in a week. I Yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. You're probably right about the news cycle. It's so fast that
Mm.
it will soon be forgotten. This film will go to Rotterdam. It will have an international premiere at the big film festival in Rotterdam at the end of January. So it will come back a little bit. But it will be easy to dismiss as something that's happening far away and is not very important. I
Well,
also wonder if
it,
the filmmaker himself just calculated that this was going to be banned. I mean, he is almost a non-person in Hong Kong. His name is Kiwi Chow. His last film, he had to sell the rights, so he couldn't be connected to it anymore. I'm sure his name was on the credits, but he didn't own it and he couldn't be held responsible for it. That film was also not shown in Hong Kong. And this new film, which is actually set in Taiwan about education and suicide and um, mass hysteria, also stars Anthony Wong, who is a Hong Kong actor who also is effectively on on a watch list, and finds it extremely difficult to get jobs in Hong Kong. So Kiwi Chow plus Anthony Wong, surely he must have known that this film would never be allowed to
of
be
course.
shown in Hong Kong.
The thing internationally, if something is banned in a place like Hong Kong, it does increase the chances of headlines elsewhere in the world. So every time this film will be shown in wherever, whichever festival it goes to, wherever it goes, it will be the one that was banned in Hong Kong. So maybe it works for him and it works for Hong Kong because they take no risks. And as I said, broadly speaking, I would not ban anything, and I don't like censorship.
And I think that's the moment we should bring everything to a close here, because
that is the point. My
that is
point
the
of the
point.
week.
That is the point. Thank you, Janine.
Patrick, thank you. Lovely talking to you as usual. Have a brilliant weekend, and we'll be back. We will be back on Boxing Day.
We'll be back on Boxing Day. Thank you, Janine. Looking forward to it.